ethically and responsibly, how we can make the assessment experience something that the students is actually looking forward to and enjoy. It's not something that they dread going into, or it's not something that they think is a chore. When you talk about digital assessment, then authenticity, integrity is something that you then have to make sure that you uphold.
You're listening to Around the School Table, hosted by me, Steve Davis, and proudly powered by Zuno Suite. We'll be bringing together the many voices shaping primary and secondary education across Australia, from principals and teachers to education thought leaders and system innovators. Whether you're in the classroom, the staff room, or the boardroom, this is your podcast to be informed, inspired, and connected. Today on Around the School Table, we're joined by Hans Moningka, Director APAC at RM, a global leader in educational assessment powering exams for major bodies around the world. With multilingual expertise spanning Indonesian, Japanese and Mandarin, Hans guides the shift towards digital assessments across the region, balancing innovation and integrity. In this conversation, he'll be exploring AI's role in proctoring and cheating prevention, the slow but steady move to digital exams, and how schools can bridge the gap between tools and effective use, especially amid rising AI-generated content. So if you're an educator who's navigating assessment's future, I think in this chat you'll find that Hans offers practical optimism and strategic insights. Hans, welcome to Around the School Table.
Welcome, Steve, and all the listeners. I'm glad to be here.
Now, Hans, at RM, you work with some of the most influential assessment bodies around the world, from national curriculum authorities to international boards. I'm going to do a bit of name dropping here. We've got the International Baccalaureate, IB, Cambridge University, they manage the GCSE in the UK, and more closely to home, in my home state, the South Australian Certificate of Education Board, the SACE. Can you unpack RM's role in the global assessment ecosystem and why assessment integrity is so important?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Very strong name dropping there. But we're definitely proud to be partnering with sort of world-class organizations such as your own SACE board, as well as New Zealand Qualification Authority that we work with as well in providing the best possible assessment solution for school students. One of the things that we proud ourselves in RM is that we offer a personalized, flexible assessment opportunities which fits today's changing profile, right? So in today's sort of society, we've got changing demographics, changing requirements. And when we talk about digital assessments, it's not as simple as replicating something on paper on screen. It's trying to do what is possible in terms of assuring that candidates, in this case students, because we do also other work with professional qualification authorities and bodies such as the International Chartered Accountants, England and Wales, and APAC as well. It's focusing on the person. So when they complete the assessment, they are confident that they are assessed for what they're capable of and what they know. It's not just a regurgitation of knowledge in that sense, right? And I think that authentic assessment experience is very important in this day and age, particularly when you consider the influence of AI and all that sort of thing. I suppose if I have to distill it into one sort of statement, is that what we are trying to do in RM in terms of assessment integrity is that when we offer assessment, we are offering assessments so that it is not measured by what is technically possible, but by the experience and how well it works for the candidates.
My imagination might be getting away with me, but as you were talking and describing that, I was picturing the most romantic notion of a classic liberal education for the well-to-do in the 17 and 1800s, where an examiner might be having robust conversation and looking the candidate in the eye rather than just ticking boxes. Is that the sort of thing you're hoping to emulate at some point, where it really is that robust, customized, tailored to the student as the ultimate goal?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're trying to do, as I said, is do something obviously ethically and responsibly. How we can make the assessment experience something that the students is actually looking forward to and enjoy, right? It's not something that they dread going into, or it's not something that they think is a chore. We've done some research around sort of learner experience as well, so we've kind of got a bit of insight into what is it that they want, what is it that they're expecting, and also what is it that they've experienced in the past, and how that formed their experience.
That's such an attractive paradigm. I was listening to a podcast with two academics from America, and one of them said he was glad he did English Lit as a major, because as he got into it, he thought, I get to read these books as part of my study, and was loving every moment of it. That follows on with what you've said, that ultimately you hope a student will enjoy being tested and letting their knowledge and application of their knowledge be like flying a kite, something to embrace, not the stereotypical fear-instilling dread.
No, that's exactly right. Like, we want to go from a growth mindset, not sort of a deficit, right? So I used to be a teacher as well as a trade for a good decade and a bit, before working on sort of the ed tech side of things. So when we talk about a learner and their experience and their journey, it's so important that we make that a valuable experience, right? We want to build confidence. We want to reduce anxiety. We want to make that. We want to make the experience as well as it could for them.
On a personal note, I mentioned in my introduction that you speak Indonesian, Japanese, Mandarin in the mix. How often do you have to switch between languages in your work leading RM's APAC team?
Interestingly, not so much. I mean, selamat pagi, ohayo gozaimasu, and ni hao for you, right? It's I'm lucky enough to grow up learning languages and being culturally diverse. I think the more crucial part of sort of my multicultural, multilingual experience is not the language itself, but it's the cultural awareness. When I deal with, for example, I've been in quite a few conferences last year, and events where I was in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and it is not actually the language, because English is such a universal language now that everyone is sort of almost English ready to an extent. But knowing that little nuances, knowing that little, this tiny little bow here, means a lot when you're addressing someone of a certain status. Extending your hand, your right hand for that matter, in shaking hands, making sure that you look them in the eye and have a firm handshake, for example. It's just the simple, minute things that you need to remember sometimes. But that's just sort of a glimpse of the overall cultural awareness that I experience almost day by day.
On a cultural note, if this was all being done in Indonesian, would I have started this differently? Is there anything I would have done differently within an Indonesian cultural backdrop?
Oh, obviously, we're generalizing a little bit, but to show sort of cultural awareness, if we're engaging in a sort of semi-professional engagement, where we're addressing someone, it's quite common in Indonesia to address the person and then sort of almost not list, but mention sort of their qualifications and degrees. So that's probably something that would have been different. Go, yes, so Mr. So and so, you're a professor in this, or you've got a degree in this. Would have been something that is quite common in Indonesia.
Okay, it's nice. I mean, admittedly, if you were introducing me, it would have been much shorter. Now, I've heard you say that you believe there's a slow but steady shift towards digital assessment rather than a sudden revolution. And I believe from your research that the majority of Australian students are in favour of digital assessment. It's something like 60%. From your vantage point across APAC, what factors are driving the shift and also what's slowing it down?
Yes. So just sort of to give you a bit of a background context on that research, just to make sure we're sort of talking about something that is real for us. So just over a year ago, we did a research of almost 2,500 learners, and that's done across the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Canada, with sort of reasonably equal spread between those demographics. And over 59% of them say that they prefer digital assessments to paper. One thing that I'll qualify is that some of these responders to the questionnaire or research, some of them have completed digital exams before, but some of them have not. I haven't got the figures in front of me, but there's sort of a slight division between those numbers. So this, what I'm trying to say is it includes both people who have and people who haven't, right? And interestingly enough, when we talk about the ones that have experienced digital education, that numbers just sort of quadrupled almost. In that it's almost 4-1 in terms of people who prefer digital experience. So there has been a steady sort of expectations from the learners in that regard. If you're looking at the vantage point of the learners, like I said earlier, for us as an organization, we work with the peak organizations, the bodies, etc. But the learners are still front and center for us. The candidate experience is really important for us. So there has been that steady but slowly increasingly expected digitalization of assessments, not just learning. Because we have seen this the sort of quite rapid digitization of learning. COVID really threw everyone under a real frenzy, really, hasn't it? But we've seen that in assessments as well, and the organizations that we work with, they have gone on, and we can sort of work with organizations from sort of every single entry point of their digital transformation. Because when we talk about digital transformation, it's not as simple as, or not as straightforward as, we've got a paper exam, now we want to make it online. There's a whole lot of spectrum in between. We've got e-marking, for example, that we also do quite extensively. We've got on-screen marking, and then all the rest of it. What we've seen is that to meet the requirement and to sort of go with what is happening, we need to make sure that we're prepared. So wherever you are in that sort of digital transformation stage, it's important that you take steps so that you are prepared and ready for when it arrives. Because the old adage is, we've spoken about this from decades ago. The educators of today is preparing learners for something that might not even exist when they graduate, right? And that's even truer now with AI. We're looking at a very AI centric society at the moment, right? So we're looking at how we can incorporate that as well into our processes and works. Yeah.
On that research, one thing that I'd like to know is 60-odd% of students say, look, we would like digital exams. Do you have any qualitative insight as to whether that is because they might have a perception that it might be easier than a paper one? Or I have noticed in the wake of social media technology and mobile phones, the embracing of one-to-one, human-to-human interaction, the skills, the robust skills and confidence seems to have dropped. And so is it I'd much rather that than have to deal with a person. Have you got any sense behind those numbers at that level?
Yes. I'll tweak one of the sentiments that you mentioned slightly. You mentioned easier. I don't think from our research it was because it's easier, but what they've demonstrated, it's because it's more accessible. Now, whether by being more accessible it means it becomes easier for them is a whole notion that we've probably got to explore a little bit more, right? But that's, I think, the crux of why it's enjoyed or is is showing to have a bit more of a positive experience for the learners through a digital experience rather than a paper experience is because it's more accessible to them. So we've got to remind ourselves sometimes, I'm sort of exposing my age a little bit here. When I was at school, I remember a time when we were being told, oh, no, you can't use the internet because it's not reliable. It's not academically tested. You've got to go to the library and open the books up and cite the page that it's on when you read through it with your eyes. You can't just go on Google or Wikipedia and the rest of it, right? So it's a similar thing for nowadays students. Digital assessment is just more accessible to them. It's their bread and butter, if we use that expression. It's something that they're exposed to every day. They're more attuned to what is digital than in what is on paper. It's just by the nature of the current society. They consume information in that regard. They process information in that way, and it seems like it's almost makes sense, right? That they want to be assessed in that same way.
And on the human-to-human aspect, just a greater comfort level, is that what's coming through?
I think so. I think as humans, we like what is sort of familiar to us, right? So it goes in the same way. So if digital is familiar to us, then that's also something. It opens up, a whole lot of I want to say can of worms, because it's not a negative thing. It's just something that you have to discern, because obviously when you talk about digital assessment, then authenticity, integrity is something that you then have to make sure that um, you uphold, right? You can't just give them a digital exam because that's what they want, and then they can use whatever they want and not display their knowledge, because you still have to have that assessment component to it.
Managing school communication, student progress, and daily operations can be overwhelming. From tracking student performance to managing staff schedules and keeping parents in the loop, it's easy to get lost in the chaos. But it doesn't have to be. Meet Zuno, a simple, powerful, all-in-one school management solution that brings everything and everyone together in one place. Trusted by over 500,000 staff, parents and students, Zuno adapts to your unique needs, offering seamless integration and exceptional support every step of the way. With Zuno, schools save time, parents stay connected, and students can thrive, creating a stronger and more engaged school community. Ready to transform the way your school operates? Visit zuno.com.au today and experience the power of simplicity.
Now, you mentioned authenticity and integrity.
Yeah.
I want to look at both of those. Let's do integrity first, because back in my day, assessments, it was all pen and paper. I found some the other day as I was going through some files. I can't believe that I wrote that much, or that anyone was able to read it. These days, with your digital exams, they've got to cover video, audio, sometimes the input of mathematical and scientific calculations. To make sure it does have integrity, it is really that student, I've heard that the digital assessments can actually monitor mouse and even eye movements to assist with remote proctoring, which does seem very sci-fi to me. Can you just give us a glimpse of how that works?
Yes. So technology has gone leaps and bounds since I've been at school, that's for sure. And in RM, I've seen in the last sort of year and a bit, in terms of being exposed to what's possible and how they do their assessments, etc. As you mentioned, we've got a whole gamut of items, item types, input types. As you said, we're able to, because like I said earlier, we don't want to just replicate on paper because that'll be just redundant, right? So when we talk about digitalized assessment, we're talking about inputting videos, audios, making sure we can upload translations, readily translatable question items, and as you said, scientific formulations. That's all available in our platform. But you're absolutely, spot on when you said we need to make sure that that's also still being assessed in a way that upholds integrity, Right. So to what some of the things that you've mentioned, we've got this function, for example, called focus track, where you track mouse movement. That's not even remote proctoring. It's just tracking your mouse movement to make sure that you're staying within the bounds of what is being assessed, and you're not sort of moving your mouse outside. Otherwise, the invigilator can be notified, or you don't even need someone to proctor that. It's just something that automatically. We've got safe exam browsers where you can't access sort of other tech while you're on something, for example. So you can use this interchangeably, one but not the other, etc. Remote proctoring, obviously, is also something that is quite important, and you can add that layer of security as well, if you like. We've also got some partners that we work with to make sure that we're up to speed in terms of the latest tech, etc. Where we can add multiple devices to record keystrokes, to record your face, track eye movements, and AI will see whether you're actually looking at multiple things or just one thing, and then notify the examiners, right? So all those tech is available now.
Wow. So how can I cheat?
Well, just like with favour, Steve, if you're one of those students who wrote in font 2 and print it up and then stick it on your water bottles, you will find ways to cheat. Like, it's just I actually spoke to one of our sort of engagements. We had a meeting with the University of Melbourne, and one of the things that they brought up is they did some research, and they've got like a whole academic paper written on it where 5% of students will cheat, or something along those lines, right? Don't quote me on this because I'm quoting this verbatim.
Yep.
5% of students will cheat. Doesn't matter what you do, whether it is paper, whether someone's standing in front of you, whether you are being recorded, whether 5% of them will try to cheat, one way, shape, or form. You've got students who will write on their arms, right? I don't want to say myself, but I've definitely seen friends who wrote on their arms going into the exam with long sleeves so that you can't see them, right? So they will cheat. You will still cheat. You will find ways to cheat, We're not sort of naive enough to say that we've got this tech that is foolproof, that is 100% uncheatable, because the reality is there's always going to be a small percentage that will still find ways around it.
And perhaps the most brazen one is the case of job interviews that required candidates to submit video answers. And then it was discovered that one of the candidates who was shortlisted had actually submitted a digital avatar of themselves.
Yeah.
That's really pushing those. I mean, on one hand, you want to say, well, give that person a job if they've got that much ingenuity. But then the ethical side, you go, well, hang on, how will I know they're sticking to the straight and narrow? So it sounds like you are doing everything you can to make it harder and harder, but I guess where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. I think that's the long and short of it. Yeah. One of the ways that we, and this is probably sort of a little bit off that sort of notion, but I want to reiterate that when we use AI, we use it ethically and responsibly, right? We can't just be throwing out sort of sensitive information into the large language models, because then it trains them on that. Because you also, I think there's a really good blunt expression that is used in the tech world, trash in, trash out.
Yeah.
So you don't want to put so much sort of artificial stuff into the model that it starts spitting out that same artificial stuff again. So it's kind of like a loop. Because you talk about job interviews, we're seeing now job advertisements being written by AI, and then applicants are applying using AI to address the job sort of advertisement. You've got the selection criteria being written by AI, and then you're writing your responses using AI. It comes then, it's not that different to submitting an AI avatar to interview for the job.
Well, it is, because what gets lost in that is originality, individual originality. So it seems to me like you could have the best technology to sift for that, but it's becoming like sifting for specks of gold when you're gold prospecting, because people seem to be shrinking from it. This is the pointy end of where we are, not just within your realm of assessment, but within our realm of society itself, isn't it? It's a big question. It's a whole different interview.
Yeah, it is. It is a whole different interview. I will throw you one snippet out of that same learner experience research that we did around sort of accuracy of assessment. About 2/3 of them, and we have to assume that they answer honestly. About 2/3 of them, so about 66, 67%, I don't remember the exact number, they say that, and these are the ones who have enough experience, I believe, of the digital assessment. So they're one of those. There's some of those who have had a digital experience of assessments. They say that they feel that they still can be accurately assessed.
Just one thing for teachers. I mean, you mentioned earlier about COVID, EdTech just exploded. Many teachers were actually overwhelmed by the choice rather than empowered by the choice. From conversations with other educators, what do you think the biggest gap is between having the tools and actually using them well?
Look, if I have to drill it down to two things, it'll be availability and preparation. So a lot of the times, the gap between what educators are doing, and I've definitely experienced the start of it with all the sort of the digitization that happened before I left the teaching profession. Everything was starting to go digital, even though not quite as rapid because it was prior COVID. The lack of sort of infrastructure, technology, there's still a lot of educators who are experiencing the reality of sometimes there's just not enough devices, sometimes there's just not enough time to ensure that devices are used properly. So it's a lot of those availability questions, right? Have you got the time? Have you got the space? Have you got technology? Have you got the infrastructure? Have you got a reliable enough internet? Have you got enough of a security framework that students won't play games while you're trying to deliver assessments, right? So these are all sort of the big questions. But all that aside, as one sort of massive real issue or concern, preparation is also equally quite good. So if we're talking specifically, for example, about assessments, one of our findings was also that the students are saying that if they are to be confident in performing at what they feel is an acceptable or an accurate level of their abilities, they reckon that, and this sort of aligns with some of our findings from elsewhere as well, when educators are saying, I need this much to prepare for it. It's up to 2 years that they need to, in some cases more, to prepare for not just the assessment itself, but also the platform and the method of that assessment, whether that's paper or whether that's digital, right? So if you're using a particular platform like ours, it might be that the first year or two, it's a bedding in year when everyone's getting comfortable, but it's an important stage where you're preparing for that, because as with everything, change doesn't come easily, right? So depending on where you are, I mentioned sort of that digital transformation entry point. So depending on where you are, there's like 4 or 5 different possible entry points in our experience. Like I said, paper to digital, e-marking, on-screen marking. There's different styles, and just even on-screen item banking, for example, right? It's all about the preparation. It's all about the steps that you do to prepare for it. Because as with everything, you're only as good as how you prepare for it.
Hans, finally, let's just take one step back. You're deeply embedded in the whole realm of digital transformation, integrity, of course, AI as well. Are you personally optimistic or cautious about the future of assessment? And is there a mindset shift perhaps that schools probably should make to stay credible and humane in this next chapter of our progress?
Well, that's a very, very big question to finish the the conversation on, Steve. Look, personally, I'm by default optimistic about most things because I always try to see the glass half full. I don't think assessment will suffer from digitization, right? I think any experience, whether that is even a negative experience, is an opportunity for growth. So at the worst case scenario for myself personally, even if this whole digitization, this whole AI experience turned out to be a negative influence, we still grow from it. We still learn from it and we'll be the better of it. And assessment will be the better because of it as well. That's my personal experience, right? In terms of what I've seen of sort of trends and what's happening currently, I don't believe that it's going away. I believe that assessment will continue on its digitization pathway because we're seeing organizations taking that up more rather than less. So, for example, in the UK, Ofqual, which is the sort of big body for qualification in England, they've also already committed now to offer all exams on screen by 2030. So that's not going away. That's happening. The IB and the Coupa, we're working on a long-term digital transformation project where we're moving all their exams to an online experience. So I don't personally see that that's going to go away. It's going to happen, but not in a transformational, as in overnight it will change, unless obviously it's prompted by a pandemic
Yes.
or something along those lines, right? But it is here. It is there to stay, and we've got the technology for it. Maybe the whole system is not fully ready for digital exams in terms of infrastructure or framework, like I mentioned earlier. But we've got the technology for it. We've got enough software and SaaS companies out there pushing the boundaries in terms, and I've been part of quite a few of them in the last sort of decade that I've been in education technology, that I can see there's a steady shift of readiness. There's a steady shift of mindset, of openness to transform ways of working, right? And I think that's going to be the future.
So from a mindset shift perspective, if you're in a school right now, what would make the future easier for you to embrace this?
I would take whatever steps is possible. All right. Going back to what I was saying, there's different steps for everyone. The journey is not the same for everyone. Like, it's not like, okay, we have to be digitally ready, so we're going to start digitizing our maths exam. It's not like that, because it's different for everyone. For someone, it might just mean that, hey, we are going to add a digital element to one of our lessons, for example. In some cases, it might be as simple as we're going to take our role on the computer rather than on paper now, so that we don't lose those records easily. So it's taking those steps to be prepared. Having an open mindset, I think, is the key. So not going, head in the sand, I don't want to do anything. I think that's not quite the right mindset, in my opinion. Obviously, everyone's different, but taking those steps, however small it is, in terms of getting prepared, I think it's the key.
Hans Moningka, thank you very much for joining me around the school table.
Pleasure, Steve, and look forward to our next chat.